Hello, my lovely humans, and welcome back to the Scenic Route Astrology. My name is Makayla, and I am an evolutionary astrologer here to talk about the Venus star point in Leo that's happening on August 13th, 2023 this year. So I've been working on this for the last night and into today. I'm really excited to share this information. I took the Venus star point course from Ariel Gutman, where this work is established from last year. And I also put out a Venus star point in Libra video, which is a huge cycle that happens. So if you haven't seen that video, it's actually going to be heavily related to what I'm going to talk about in this one as well. So yeah, just be sure to check that out. That's somewhere on my channel. But today, my focus is to help you understand how this big star point can help you in your evolutionary journey and how it can help you enact out your soul's desires in relation to your natal Venus placement. Okay, so I'm going to go a little bit into the mythology, also what is the Venus star point in general. I'm going to show you what the Venus cycle looks like in the sky so you can, connect more to the right side of your brain when understanding this, because Venus does rule over the creative parts of our life, right? The mystical, loving, emotionally feeling connected parts of our life. And so we don't really want to get too intellectual in this space. And so I really encourage you take a few moments if you need to pause the video to get grounded. I'm going to give you a couple opportunities throughout this video to kind of just sit into your creative space and your creative energy. One of the techniques that I usually do to get into the right side of my brain is I will just take about 5 minutes to meditate and to literally doodle on a piece of paper and just start drawing. And it doesn't have to be anything special or good. Nobody's going to see it. I just begin to just draw whatever is coming through me at the time. And sometimes it's popsicle trees or dogs that look like cats. I mean, whatever. The point is I just want to open your space up and your perspective into this more creative side of Venus. Because, this is a really juicy transit that we're getting. And the other potency of this is that we actually have a huge Venus cycle this summer. So Venus is going to move into Leo tomorrow on June 5th, and it's going to remain there until October 8th. So as you can see, we've got plenty of time during the middle of the year to enjoy Venus and Leo, and especially tap into these specific gifts during the retrograde period. Now, there will be other videos that I put out based on the whole retrograde cycle and the certain aspects of that. I heavily just want to focus on what does this mean for you in your chart? What is this activating? And how is this playing out as we're shifting and evolving in our lives? This is important because Leo is opposite to Aquarius. And we, as a lot of us know, who've been studying astrology or tracking the transits, Pluto moved into Aquarius this year, and we're starting a whole 20-year cycle in our lives. So this star point and this retrograde that's happening this year is super synchronistic, as I think it's giving us an opportunity to really tap into our own creative potential that we're going to be able to express and fall in love with in a new way over the next 20 years. So there's a lot to unfold. So the other thing is that this is a very auspicious time if you are ruled by Venus. So if you have Sun, Moon, or Rising in Libra or Taurus, this is a very auspicious time for you. If you are a Leo, Sun, Moon, or Rising, this is also an auspicious time for you because Venus is going to be transiting your chart. But also if you have major connections to Venus in your natal chart, or major connections to Taurus or Libra archetype, or the second house and the seventh house are heavily filled up, right? There can be a lot of ways that we can see how Venusian themes are highlighted in our charts. And some people have more relationship-oriented themes in their soul's journey in this life than other people, okay? I very much do astrology and see astrology through a lens of relationships, because Venus is extremely strong in my chart. It is with my North Node. It's in Aquarius, so it has to do with reaching out to humanity and large groups of people, really progressive thoughts. And I'm also a Libra rising, okay? So it's also my chart ruler. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is that I'll give you the date. So Venus will enter Leo tomorrow on June 5th. So hopefully this video is out right before then. It will station retrograde July 22nd, where it will go retrograde. It will station at 28 degrees Leo. So if there are any planets, I would say give or take 5 degrees of 28 degrees Leo, or the fixed signs, you'll definitely be impacted by this retrograde cycle. And then it will station direct on September 3rd at 12 degrees of Leo. Again, you want to give yourself a give or take 5 degrees, and then it will begin to move forward and move out of its full retrograde by October 8th, 2023, when we get Venus in Virgo after that. So anyway, we have a lot to get into this. I'm going to open up with just a few slides that I want to share, and then I'm going to get into the transits and share the chart by the end of the video. So if you don't care about the mythology or connecting to Venus in your chart, in your natal chart, because I'm going to go through Venus and all the 12 archetypes, you can just skip forward to the end of the video. Okay, so Venus star point in Leo. I wanted to use some really bright colors, vibrant colors, because Leo is about being bold and self-expressive. I do think that a lot of people are going to feel this energy. I personally love it. I like to see people express themselves in really bold ways, really loud ways. And so there will definitely be a summer, I think, of creativity and love that gets to be birthed under this transit that begins. It really begins tomorrow on June 5th, but the actual star point will be in August 13th. So again, this work is based off of Ariel Gutman's work. You can see her work, her podcasts, all of that on sophiavenus.com. I really highly recommend her course. I think it was about 3 videos long, and I also bought the book on Amazon. And there's so much information in here. So she did a really good job, and she is the expert. So if you like what I share here and you want to get even more detailed, I would definitely recommend taking her course, or at least perusing through her website and looking at the different lectures and stuff that she had posted. So this is a quick view of the transit chart. I am definitely going to incorporate some asteroids that I saw are very relevant to this star point, like Eros and Psyche, and it does play into, these Aphrodite, Venusian types of stories, and there is a lot of passion inside of this chart that we're getting coming up. So we'll definitely be diving into that. If this overwhelms you from a chart perspective, please don't let you just kind of sit with it. Don't worry about making all these crazy connections right now. Just kind of sit with the chart and allow your creativity to expand itself. Just notice how many fire signs are there, how many earth signs are there, are certain placements of the planets on one side of the chart compared to the other? Are they more spread out? Kind of tap into this more creative, playful side of this chart. If you're new to astrology, or even if you're an expert, don't get overwhelmed by all of the asteroids I've put out there. Just kind of allow yourself to get creative and not too analytical with how this can play out, because what I'm seeing with this star point is that we're not going to be able to help what we get struck by with passion. And we're not going to be able to help ourselves when it comes to wanting to fall in love with a project or some type of creative aspect that we want to go forward with in our life and kind of take on in our life. Just like when you fall in love in general, you really can't help that process, right? It's kind of out of your control, if you will. And so sometimes we have to allow ourselves to go with the flow. And that's one of the things that I was seeing with this current chart and this energy. So I'll be explaining that later on at the end of the lecture. The other thing I wanted to point out too is if we just look at the elements, if we just go back to the basics right here, we can see that there's a lot of earth, right? Earth is heavily outweighing all of the other elements. There's no air. So again, it's not this left side of the brain. It's not this intellectual side of the brain that we're working with. Okay. It's deeply feeling oriented and intuitively oriented. Okay. But there is a lot of room for us to create something tangible with this, right? Because we're bringing the earth element. There's a way for us to have something that we can put out in the 3D world that maybe we can make money with, okay? That maybe we can find that is self-sustainable for us, that brings us a foundation in our life, that we truly are passionate about, okay? So a little less talk, a little more doing under this kind of energy and this kind of transit. And on the other thing is when we look at the modalities, there's a lot of fixity in the chart, which is really, really good, in my opinion, if we want to create something for the long haul and we want something to last, right? The fixed signs have a way of sustaining something, right? Of making sure that it's fed through and through, that it's not really changing all that much. There is flexibility here with the mutable, with 9 in the immutable. So especially I think when that retrograde period hits us, we'll often have a change of heart, a change of direction with any retrograde or a reevaluation of something of some sort. And so there will be that flexibility right there, but there's not a lot of cardinal. So I'm not seeing us like kicking off the ground running with things under this transit and it not sticking for the long haul. I very much think that this is a transit that's going to ignite a passion of some sort within our soul's desire, that we can really utilize going forward, and while we're co-creating with the life that we want or the relationships that we want, moving forward. So I wanted to go briefly on myth because I'm not an Hellenistic astrologer. I'm evolutionary oriented, more deeply psychologically oriented, but I do like to focus in on mythology because I do believe that these storylines help us understand from a psychological perspective how we connect to that in our own personal lives, right? So myth isn't to me something to live by. It's a storyline that can be played out, but it's not a set of rules like I think the ancients really were using them as, right? A way for society to kind of fall in line by these mythical storylines that they had. However, they were super intuitively connected to what reality was unfolding and how these myths were playing out in real life, and how us humans were actually acting like these gods and goddesses did in these storylines. And so according to the Greeks, they called Venus Aphrodite, and the Romans referred to it as Venus, okay? But either way, Greco-Roman mythology, it's Aphrodite and Venus. But since our Western culture is more influenced by the Greco-Roman type of mythology, I was kind of orienting more towards those storylines. And Aphrodite has 2 different storylines in their myth, which makes sense because Venus itself is a sign, it's a planet that does represent duality in a way, because Venus rules over 2 different zodiacal signs, right? Rules over Libra and it rules over Taurus, which both have to do with relationships and values, but in very different ways, okay? In very different senses. One is earth, one is air, And we're going to break that down as we get deeper into what this Venus and Leo transit means. Okay, so the first storyline that the Greeks believed in was that Saturn was pissed off at his father, Uranus, right? And he castrates his father, and his father's testicles fall into the ocean, into the sea. And from them, they kind of form this sea foam, and it kind of stimulates like the ocean itself. And first is born the three Furies, okay, which end up resembling the shadow qualities of Venus in some way. But then, after the three Furies are birthed from the ocean, comes Venus on this beautiful seashell. And a lot of us can see Venus on a seashell in artwork with her pearls and such. And she was this just beautiful creature, considered the most beautiful goddess there was. And she very much owned that as an archetype. Like, she's pretty vain with her looks and her beauty, and she knew the power that her sensuality and her sexuality held. Okay, and in many of her mythological stories, she is exactly doing that. She's exactly using that. But this is what the Greeks called the celestial Venus, because she was born from the sky itself, okay? And this was one side of Venus of how human love is connected to the divine, right? To the higher self, to all of creation, if you will. And it was like a higher, almost spiritual side of Venus, but not related to the earthly realm, which leads us into Aphrodite Pandemos, right? Which is the second storyline, the second myth, where Aphrodite was actually the daughter of Zeus and Dione. And Dione was an earth goddess. So this associated Venus with nature and sensuality and the reproduction of humanity. Okay, and this gave her more of like a common goddess type of archetypal figure, and where she kind of resembled, in an essence, the love that we had for one another on like the earthly realm. Okay, and so this would connect to, relationship oriented love and connection. And in this storyline, Zeus, her father, forces her, because she is very vain goddess, he forces her to marry the ugliest of gods, who is known as Vulcan in Rome. And so Aphrodite, being the most beautiful of goddesses that existed, and this is a picture of Aphrodite up here with Vulcan, with their child Cupido down here. So, which we'll talk about later when we talk about the transits, because Eros and Cupid do have their role in this Venus Starpoint that we're getting coming up. And so a part of this story, actually, that Aphrodite and Vulcan have is the fact that Vulcan, although he was considered the ugliest god by, the god and godly realms, he had this power to yield and create anything, any kind of object that was considered like the most beautiful thing to create of all. So if he was to create like a vase, like a vase for flowers, it was supposed to be the most beautiful creation that could have ever existed. And so even though on the exterior part of him, he, didn't have this beautiful essence, or, this aesthetically pleasing essence, it was to say that the inside of him, like the creation that existed with inside of him, was just as beautiful. And so this storyline here was meant to portray that there is duality in life, and that, we should look to the polarity of everything. Okay, we should not take for granted everything just based on the exterior principles. Okay, and so in a way, Venus has to do with sensuality and her sexuality, and an artistic expression and the connection, but it also has to do with marriage, in relationships, especially as we came into the patriarchal societies where, you know, marriage became forced for women, right? In the Greco-Roman era. And then it wasn't as free as it was in the Babylonian times, where the older versions of Venus, like Inanna, for instance, was more free and she could do whatever she wanted. And she had even more heightened sexuality because she was not suppressed by the patriarchal society. But we can see over time how Venus gets conditioned by the evolution of, you know, humanity. And so here, there is also a desire that comes from Aphrodite being constricted by this marriage and this relationship, where she ends up having many affairs. She has many affairs. She's not loyal to her husband at all. And that becomes a Venusian theme too, that we encounter when we think about Venus and Taurus, right? What is our value? What is our core value? And what is our essential needs that we need when it comes to relationships? But when we think about Venus from the Taurus perspective, it's our ability to meet our own needs first. And that comes from that earthly realm, all right, that Aphrodite Panimus realm, where it's about our sensuality, it's about our senses, and it's about our love for one another and humanity. But first, we have to love ourselves enough in order to relate to others, okay? And because the Taurus archetype has a blind spot to Libra, the other side of Venus, okay, we often project not meeting our own needs onto the partner. We often project our expectations onto the partner, only to experience sorrow at some point when we realize that partner cannot meet those expectations and those needs. Okay, so for Aphrodite, you know, Vulcan could not meet her expectations of beauty and what she was seeking in lust, right, in her sensuality. And so out of her own vanity and whatever, I mean, I'm not one to judge, like she was forced into this marriage anyway. She ends up having a long time affair with the god Eris, who's known as Mars in Roman mythology. And so there's also this element with the Venus archetype where, you know, there are turbulent times in our relationships. And there are times where things aren't matching up or meeting our needs. And if we look at the just basic physiology of the planet Venus itself, it's a hot planet and it's got volcanoes literally erupting on that planet. And so in essence, we can also have these volcanic experiences in love and lust and relationship erupt within our life. And so we have this mixture between just like connection and falling in love and what is our principles and meeting sorrow and having jealousy and having deep desires, right? All these feelings really override Venus in our chart, right? It really has a really big layer in serving the way that we're living out our life and our soul is operating in this life, okay? And so the deeper that we can connect to all of these themes and the deeper we can connect to like what Aphrodite has been through and what she symbolizes in all these different mythologies and storylines, you know, I think we can deeper connect to and relate to the storylines of ourselves, and we can uncover our own truths when it comes to relationships and relating to others. Okay. Sorry, my dog is digging in the couch right now. So when we look at the natal chart Venus, come here, little girl. When we look at the natal chart Venus, there are a few things that we need to take into consideration. And the important part of understanding how this star point is going to help you right now in your current space and time in life, it's important to understand what is the evolutionary intention of my natal Venus, okay? Because it's always all of the transits Every day we have different transits. They're always serving the evolutionary intention that is the basis of your natal chart. That is why you are so special. And that's why transits and horoscopes literally can never relate to everybody, because it's affecting your natal chart specifically for you. Okay. It's important why we learn astrology or we work with an astrologer. So, what is the evolutionary intention of your Venus, and how is your Venus placement serving the evolutionary intention of the unconscious desires of your soul, which is your Pluto? And how is it also helping serve the organizing principle of your chart, which is the sun? And you might want to backtrack that. You might want to pause it, backtrack it, and like listen to that again and kind of like sit with it for a minute, right? Because Venus is one of our planets that helps operate our soul's intentions and desires in this lifetime. Okay. We express it through the ego, through the sun. But the biggest unconscious layer is that Pluto's desire, right? And what is that intention overall? Once you understand what your chart soul intention is in this lifetime, and like what you came here to do and work on in this lifetime, and what you were kind of tripping up on in other lifetimes, and if you're trying to make better this time around, then you can look at these transits in a whole new light. And you're like, oh my God, this is going to give me an opportunity for this, for instance, right? And so we'll dig into this more. I'll probably use my own chart as an example because it just makes sense. But so questions I want you to ask when you're looking at your natal chart. And if you don't have your natal chart, you can pull it up for free at astro.com, or you can get it off of my website. Or if you're ready to start working with astrology, I have a discount for an astrology software. It's called Luna Astrology. It's beautiful software. I'll put the link down below, or you could just email me and I'll help you out, or you can book a reading with me and I'll help you out. So anyway, you want to consider the house that your natal Venus is in and the sign that it's in, because this will be conditioning that evolutionary intention. Okay. Then you also want to look to the cusps of where Taurus and Libra are in your chart, because those also add a layer into how Venus is operating. Okay. So consider that, right? And you don't have to get super deep into it. You just have to like look at it and consider it, right? It's a really quick process. This is more of a creative side than an analytical thing. Okay. Then I want you to reflect and start asking yourself these questions of, what is the evolutionary intention of my natal Venus theme? And why did my soul choose this theme? Right? So you can journal about it and like, what could be the reasons, right? What could be the reasons for this, right? For me, my natal Venus is in Aquarius. It's conjunct my North Node and my Mars. So that means my South Node is in Leo. And considering the placements, it means that I've done Leo themes in other lives where I was more like the spotlight, right? I was more of like the theatrical player. I might have been an actress. I think I was probably a singer because I used to want to be a singer when I was 13 years old. And I feel like my soul was used in a way that I was always having to perform. And in this lifetime, my natal Venus in Aquarius is all about giving back and connecting and giving my warmth and my generosity, my South Node in Leo, putting it into the people, like giving and inspiring other people to be themselves, right? Connecting with humanity, being cheerful for humanity, fighting for the underdog and certain types of dynamics and ways, right? So, that's part of my intention for my Venus placement, right? And then the other thing you want to evaluate after that, after you've kind of got a list going or a brainstorm going, how can I encourage growth in this area of my life? And am I meeting my own needs? And am I managing my expectations? It's very important to understand that a part of working with Venus is understanding that we do need other humans to co-create with. We do need other humans to help us evolve, but not in the sense where they're carrying us across our journey, or they have to, give us a pacifier at times, or like, we have to cut the umbilical cord in some ways, because even when we get disappointed, it is also helping us learn more about loving ourselves. And so it is normal to have had expectations, or sometimes have an expectation for a situation. And then when that gets confronted, it's just reflecting back to you something, a part of that person that you think you cannot own, that they have, but you actually have it within yourself. And it's just about owning it and claiming it, and giving it some spirit and life. Okay. And I actually think this is a very important part, considering the specific Venus star point we're getting in Leo, right? Because it is about owning our own self-expression, owning our ego, being proud, not feeling shied away, if we're afraid to show up for ourselves, or express ourselves of some sort. So I'm going to quickly go through Venus sign house placements to help people who, are new to astrology, or just want a reminder of what these kind of themes could show up for you. Okay, so if you have Venus in Aries or in the first house, this can tend to be a little bit of an impatient Venus, right? It wants to operate in a more independent way, encourages spontaneous activity. These people are more pioneering, where they like to be the first. They're often very competitive in their nature. They like to have a mission to conquer, to go after something that's very exciting for them. And they tend to be very intense people, intense in relationships and intense in their passions. If they will, they can be quick tempered, but also quick to forgive in relationships as well. And they tend to be very straightforward people. Not, there's no time for bullshit, because they want things to be quick, right? And so that's not a bad thing. We can get things done really, really fast. They're sharp with Venus in Aries or Venus in the first house. Venus in Taurus, or the second house. Venus in Taurus is in rulership, or has affinity. I don't really like the word rulership, more affinity with Taurus. So this is a more comfortable place for Venus to be in, right? It's more the sensual side of Venus, right? That earthly goddess side, right? It's a more down to earth type of archetype. It's loyal, it's chill, it wants to just like be by the garden or sitting in a hot tub with a glass of wine. It definitely would appreciate more material comforts, so like having the hot tub or having the nice car. And it's not to say like this material stuff is bad, it's just it works hard to get what it puts of value, right? And so if these people really like Mercedes, they're going to work hard and get their Mercedes. If they really like and they really value some type of like I don't know, like 1955 Chevy, did they make them then? I don't know, like you know what I mean, like old timer cars, like then that's what they're going to want, that's what they're going to work on. It just depends on the other parts of the individual and your makeup. But this type of Venus will have strong values, and they'll be affectionate. They'll love affection. They'll love sensuality, and they're very comfortable with their body. They're going to be, they're not going to be afraid to like burp in front of you or something, right? They're just more practical when it comes to that sense. Venus in the third house or Gemini is going to love communication. It's going to love texting. You could probably write like a letter to a Venus in Gemini or a third house Venus, and they would just love to get a love letter or love note. I'm talking like sticky notes on the fridge. They definitely value education and learning. They might find value in also teaching their own gifts. They're often very witty, so they have this like comedy kind of side to them, or they'd like to go to comedy shows. That's something that they find enjoyment in, because Venus is like how we find fun and pleasure, and like what we kind of, we do to get into the creative artistic side of ourselves, how we connect to that. They're definitely more of an intelligent oriented type of Venus. And they also like teamwork and working with like the community, right? The surrounding community. They might be involved in like networking events, or go to farmers markets. And they might be more family oriented or very close with their siblings. Venus in Cancer or the fourth house. This tends to be a very nurturing, sensitive type of Venus. There's this mothering aspect as well, where it's like overprotective of the relationship, overprotective of stuff. Right. But there's also a deeply psychic and intuitive side to this Venus placement, where you can't get past what they will intuitively know. It's highly sensitive, and it's sensitive to like the vibration of everything around them, because yes, is the shell, do they have a protective shell? Yes, but that shell is so soft. It is barely there. It is just enough to protect themselves when they need. The inside is squishy and soft, and there's like this very loving, connective, nurturing type of dynamic with this Venus. You're gonna be taken care of, to an extent with this Venus, and they're very domestic. They will love to beautify the home. They will take pride in the home. I've got Venus in the fourth house, so like I love to decorate. I've got to have nice furniture, that kind of thing. We take pride in feeling really comfortable in the nesting place, like liking to host parties and things like that, which can be Venus and Leo too, but more so like my space is where I find connectivity the most. Leo fifth house, which is what we're going to go deeper in today, later on when we look at the chart. But this is about all the fun things, right? All the fun things. Leadership. These people are a little bit more dramatic. They got a little bit more flair. They've got this magnetic ability to them. Very playful oriented type of Venus. They like to bring the party where they go. They want to go to the party. They're going to just dress maybe in loud colors, or like, really eccentric outfits that are really, really beautiful, really high vibe. And they often love to perform in some type of way. And it's not a negative thing. It's just like they're good at being front and center and stage. If they want the spotlight, they can have it. And it often, because they're so magnetic, this placement doesn't really have to try that much anyway to get that kind of magnetism towards them. It's just gonna be really really easy just to attract. And also like the loving side, because it rules the heart. Venus and Leo in relationship is very generous to partners, and very giving, and warm-hearted. But they really need that affection back too. Like that's one of the needs of that Venus placement, is that like the admiration somehow fulfills the ego, and helps, validate the ego in some way. And sometimes these are good for the soul, and sometimes these are bad. Again, it depends on your evolutionary intention. But these are questions to ask yourself, right? When we looked at the slide before, like what is the evolutionary intention behind my Venus placement? What is my lessons that I need to learn? Virgo sixth house tends to be a more modest Venus. Very helpful in relationship. Might even be so helpful to the extent where it's too much. Health oriented, very tidy and like clean, and probably will want, partners to reflect that kind of same space as well. Very gentle and reserve oriented type of energy around this Venus. And they can have like high expectations, because they are basically refining the qualities that came before in Leo. And so they're perfecting things, they're shining things up, they're sharpening things up, they're paying more attention to the detail, and they're able to discern, okay, what qualities do I value and what I don't, right? And it can kind of cut out the excess weight that isn't needed to be there. And from an intellectual side, okay, emotional side of cutting is more of the Scorpio energy, where the intellectual side, how is this practically good for my soul's intention, right, is more of the Virgo side. Again, communication is going to be important with the Venus and Virgo, but not to the point where like it's draining. I feel more like, does this make sense? Yeah, okay, like, let's have a plan. of action to fix it at this point, because like I don't really want to go backwards. I want to like keep checking things off the list and keep moving forward and keep building and so forth. We got the second half of the zodiac, Venus in Libra. Again, Venus has affinity with Libra, so comfortable in this house placement or in this sign. And these tend to be more of like the diplomatic Venus. They understand fairness and justice. Now, this does not mean that it's going to be equal or there's going to be harmony, because with Libra, we have to experience the sways of the scales in order to find that balance. So there will be times of life where the imbalance feels really strong, and Libra Venus is like, oh hell no. Oh hell no. We gotta bring this back into, you know, even Stevens over here. They can be very persuasive because they understand how to listen, very good at listening to the other person, and then being able to somehow use their Venusian ability to negotiate and get what they want or get their way. I often find with Venus placements, they have a really good time at making other people do things for them. And that's okay. That's a way of delegating that they learned from the Virgo process. So they tend to be very popular because they're also very attracted to aesthetic pleasures. This can sometimes be the vanity side of Aphrodite that I see come out, because certain types of Venus placements, and it doesn't have to just be with Libra, I can see it in the other archetypes as well, where you'll know how to use the sex appeal in your archetype to a way that you can, you know, negotiate or be persuasive with partner in a sense, right? But it kind of gets heightened to me when you've got Venus in Libra, or you know, you just kind of know that you have that, and so they use it as like an artistic expression, which again isn't a bad thing. But we can see it play out more now. And I do think these themes are going to be heightened even more when we have the nodal shift in South Node in Libra coming up next month, right? So again, this video is pretty important because it's all connecting. It's all connecting themes. In Scorpio, just because it has less words does not mean it is less complicated. Probably one of the more complicated Venus placements, because apart from this, I didn't write it there, but we can deal with betrayal and loss and abandonment issues with Venus and Scorpio, where this placement has to deal with some really deep emotional wounding that is meant to help the soul evolve and transform itself in this life, you know, and that will go for any Scorpio placement really. But when we're talking about Venus themes, Venusian themes, it has to do with, okay, well, how have we done relationships in prior lives, and why did our soul have this Venus and Scorpio situation showing up now? Like, did we manipulate others? Did others manipulate us? Were we too trusting? And there's a need to dig into more of the mysterious side of life and the occult side of life, right? Esoteric knowledge, deep psychology, deep work on the self, and just investigate all of those hidden realms, all of those secret realms that we might not understand on the surface layer. Okay, this placement is deeply sexual, but in the sense that it's seeking to merge a spiritual union with partner. It's seeking to go beyond certain levels of sexual connection that can penetrate kind of on a soul level, on an emotional and psychological soul level, where like true union and trust is merged and formed. So it's a very intense placement. People with this placement or Venus in the 8th house or in Scorpio just tend to show up very intense in their nature. They're not messing around in relationships. They need to be able to trust themselves and others in relationships. So it's very intense placement, but you know, it's transformative. Sagittarius in the ninth house, we've got now a whole different vibe of Venus where this is like freedom, loving Venus. Okay. This is also a big, fun, spontaneous type of energy. These people like to take risks. They like to go on adventures. They really value religion or faith or higher knowledge. It's a part of their value system. They might want to connect with people on foreign lands or learn about different cultures. That might really ignite and inspire their Venusian quality. They've got this nomadic sense to them. And that doesn't mean all Venus and Sag or ninth house people do travel all over the world. Sometimes they can do it virtually or, in their own space or mind. There'll be different ways, or maybe around the country or around, their area. Like I live in New England, so maybe they're just stick to New England. But in a way, like they can't really be held down. Like they've got to be buoyant and allowed to have openness to be creative, and open up their mind. It's very right brain oriented as well, where it's kind of, yeah, they're just not boxed in by anything. They've got a higher creative, inspirational essence about them that wants them to keep seeking for more. And look for the meaning of things, right? The meaning and the value of things showing up. For Capricorn, 10th house, this is a Venus that is super loyal, super, super loyal. You can do business with this Venus, right? In relationship, they might want to start a business with you, or if you're, business partner, they're a hard worker. They're in it for the long term because they're thinking investment. Like, what am I investing my time and energy into, right? Investment of energy is a Venus quality. And is it reliable? Like, is this worth my time? Because anything with Capricorn, we're thinking about that long-term time. Like, I don't want a quick fix here. I want something that's going to be a foundation and grow. And in a way too, they're extremely ambitious because they want to climb the ladder. They want to be successful, right? And they're really serious about it. It's serious. So even commitment or creative work is a serious dynamic for these people. And they tend to like more of a controlled environment where maybe like a Venus and Sag will get them a little bit uneasy. They'll be like, I don't understand how you can just like bounce around all this and like just jump out of this running car and go to the next one. Like, I want to keep my feet planted on the ground, right? So they're more of like a controlled environment, feels a little bit more secure for these people. And that's okay. And again, if they have expectations of partner wanting to be that way too, they'll face that disappointment, right? So again, we always want to evaluate our own natal Venus placement, understand what our needs are, what our expectations are for ourselves, and then realize that like that we can't expect that from other people. We can only hold it for our own, right? We've got to allow other people to be their own Venus. So then we got Aquarius, woo, mine. This is where it's a freedom loving Venus as well, in a different essence though, where it's very intellectually stimulated. Venus in Aquarius has a very inventive, objective type of perspective on what values are and what relationship should be. And I often find that Aquarius placements and Venus in Aquarius are ahead of the rest of humanity on a different frequency, where they see evolution in a long-term perspective where we're headed towards, and not everybody has caught up to that yet. And I could go forever on this because I've got a book that I'm writing about, an astrology book that I'm writing about relationships that I know is ahead of its time. But this has to do with overall humanity and how humanity is affected by our creative and artistic expressions and how we're choosing to relate to one another, right? We take these little pieces of how people are relating to one another, and Aquarius Venus takes it on a bigger scale, an objective scale, and we're kind of looking down and looking at how the systems are working out and figuring out how these systems could be better, how they could work better, or where the objective is headed towards, if you will. So in that sense, we can be very cool and detached because we're not like in it, like emotionally in it, even though there's other factors that can come into play where the emotions are really strong. But if we're just focusing on Venus and Aquarius, our 11th house, it's a little detached. It's a little like, yeah, I get it. I'll think about it. I can see, and it's like this just barrier, and it's not a negative barrier, like protective. It's more of like, I can't see the full picture perspective if I'm in your face with that, right? So another thing is it's a very independent oriented sign. They're progressive. They got to go their own way. They got to be their own individual. Um, wear different textures and colors, mostly textures, weird things put together, definitely have their own style. And then friends become lovers and lovers become friends. These are the type of people that I think really value your relationship to also be your best friend. And also sometimes your best friends benefit on being your lover. So nice to have Venus and Aquarius friends. And then lastly, we've got Pisces in the 12th house, Venus. Super psychic and empathetic Venus placement. Very, very, very empathetic, very romantic and idealistic. This is the type of Venus that can dream up the perfect artistic creation, really create something, or even idealize a person or a thing or a plan that they have, whatever it is, to such a level that it's not even based, it couldn't even be based in reality. But to give Pisces this, this cheer up with this Neptunian realm that they live in, this idealistic realm, we would never be able to create and dream up anything if we didn't have Pisces or the 12th house in our chart, right? We would never be able to just extract something so mystical, so out of this world, so just good for humanity, so beautiful, so artistic, something like that. We would never be able to extract it from somewhere if that somewhere didn't exist, right? We would never manifest it if that somewhere didn't exist. So Pisces Venus or Pisces 12th house really lives in a different type of state of consciousness where it's about tuning out at times to that psychic realm and allowing yourself to connect to a different level of source. These people I find would be really good at being telepathic with their partner, understanding their partner without having to speak words. If you will, like basically just being able to hold their hand and send energy to partner. And they can do this for themselves too, if they learn how to be strong enough to do this for themselves, where they can heal themselves from this sensitive, mystical place within. We get into that really deep esoteric realm with Pisces, where they float, they're floating, right? And they have such gifts to bring within this, such healing gifts to bring with this type of energy, that it really doesn't need many words, but it really just it's important to just feel into that type of level and that type of layer with this placement. And again, you always want to ask yourself, well, what is the evolutionary intention for me to have this? Why was I born with this, right? Why do I have this? How is this serving my soul's evolution in this lifetime, right? How is this helping me? And we want to do that with any placement that we have, any placement. So I'll give you a minute to hang out for a minute and kind of reflect, on your personal chart. And then also if you're in a relationship or you've got a challenge with a coworker or a best friend or a lover or, somebody you're dating, like whatever, your kid, think about their Venus placement too, and think about how their soul is acting out this journey right now. It's all relative. So after you've taken a break, hopefully a breather, a pause, a sip of water or some sort, the same thing we do with our natal placement of Venus, we want to ask the same questions with transiting Venus, right? And now, because we have our natal chart, boop, that was our natal chart. Now transiting Venus has a layer too. And again, it serves the evolutionary intention of your natal chart. And so right now we're going to have transiting Venus and Leo until, what was it, October. Yeah, October 8th. So with transiting Venus, we want to ask ourselves this. We want to consider, what are the desires of transiting Venus, Venus and Leo, relative to your natal Venus and Sun placement? And then you want to reflect on the current themes of relating, listening, connecting, partnerships, and values that are going on right now in your life. Because that's what's being worked through right now, right? And then you want to evaluate the energy exchange in these current dynamics of relating and connecting in your values and partnerships with other people, okay? You want to evaluate what's going on with this energy exchange, and is it equal? Am I happy? Do I feel drained? Do I feel fulfilled? And it doesn't have to be just people. It can be a thing, right? It can be a place. It can be a creative project, a new business you're working on. You really want to understand with Venus, what is it about this energy exchange and how is it showing up in my life right now? Okay. Before we get into the chart, I want to talk about the Venus star point in Leo. So I'm not going to overload you with information because we've got so much going on right now about actually how this works. If you want a better understanding of it, I believe I talked about it in the Venus and Libra video I posted last year, but also you can check out Ariel's work, right, on sophiavenus.com. But overall, what you just need to know is that there is a Venus star point every 9.5 months. Okay, every 9.5 months, the Venus and the Sun meet up in Cazimi, which means Venus is in the heart of the Sun, and it forms a conjunction and it creates a new Venus star point. And I'm going to show you a quick video of how this looks actually when we, let me see, when we watch it in the sky. Because Venus forms this beautiful pattern in the sky that is in the shape of a 5-pointed star. Okay, the Venus and Earth rotation around the Sun actually form a 5-pointed star in the sky. And when you look at Venus and her cycle around the Sun with other planets like Jupiter or Mars, you can Google it. It will be all these different mandalas that Venus forms. And so in essence, this actually reinforces the fact that Venus is a planet of love and beauty. Even in our sky, even when we look to her in the sky, she is resembling beauty and essence and art itself, okay? So I'm going to play this quick video for you so you can see. And she has this rotation. So every 9.5 months, she will meet up at a point. She has a 4-year cycle and an 8-year cycle, a 100-year cycle, and a 250-year cycle. And basically what this does is it creates a star in your chart. What's interesting, if you want to go deeper into this, or if you wanted to just book a reading with me, I can actually do a full chart reading for you on your specific Venus star placement, because we all have one that we are born with that actually colors the Venusian theme of our life. It was the Venus star point before we were born, and we have 2 hands and 2 legs where we actually meet fated people. We have fated people coming into our lives on these specific points in our chart, and it's really wild and it's really crazy to see, but it's way too much to put in this video right now, and it really, I can only do this on a personal chart reading, or you just have to buy Ariel's course on it. And I know this is advanced for some people, okay, so just like forget that right now if that's just like beyond your scope and that's like a little bit more advanced. It's just fun to know that we can go even deeper into the dynamics of our relationships and our creativity in our life, and what gives us like inspiration around love and like fated events and fated people and things like that. So that is that. And so we go back to the thing. Perfect. So these are the dates of the Leo Starpoint, right? Began in 1987, and this is gonna happen, and we're gonna have Venus star points in Leo until 2067. Okay, and it moves backwards through Leo. So it started at 29, and every 4 years it goes back. All right, it goes back a degree. So the one that you want to look at, you want to think, all right, what happened was in 2019 to 2020, okay, we had the Venus star point at this degree, 21, and it was direct. So basically what happened in 2019 to 2020, Venus and the sun met in Leo at 21 degrees of Leo, and it started like a new moon energy in your chart, okay? So for me, in 2019, I started flying airplanes. That, and it's in my 10th house, right? I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to travel around the world for fun. I wanted to meet with people of different culture. And I wanted to take my career in a new way, right? Leo, 10th house. That's what I started. I also met my, which was around my nodes, whatever. I also met my ex-fiance around that time too, who was my flight instructor, right? That was 2019 to 2020. 3-4 years later, we're getting the Venus star point now at 20 degrees of Leo, but it's retrograde. Okay. So the one 4 years ago was the new moon. So you want to think about what started in that Leo house 4 years ago for you. What themes started? Now we're on a full moon phase 4 years later. What's accumulated up until now? And also under a full moon, you want to realize there's adjustments being made. Some stuff doesn't stick, some stuff does. There's an adjustment period, and then we disseminate and we kind of close out that process. So now 4 years later, I'll probably start flying again. I flew for a couple of years. Me and the ex broke up, but my job changed because what happened was by discovering piloting and by going into flying, I also was brought to astrology, which you can see in my logo. There's a plane in my logo, and I'm called the Scenic Route Astrology, right? My plan changed, it shifted. The values, the core values are still there. I still work with people all over the world. I still travel for work. I still work with different cultures. I actually take in other cultures into my work now, right? I'm doing the things that I originally really wanted in a career, but was kind of a little confused about. I'm doing all those things. Maybe it's not through flying, although I do want to fly people for fun on my future retreats, right? It is a part of the process in the long haul because I still like flying airplanes for fun, but not professionally. But you can see how this cycle plays out, right? And so now I'm on this full moon phase and I'm like, oh, wow, that 10th house, that makes so much sense now. Like I'm still doing these creative Venusian Leonic things in the way that I had originally intended, but in a different way, right? And so you want to make these connections as you're thinking about this Venus star point coming up in your Leo house, right? It's related to cycles that you started 4 years ago. Okay. So we're going to look at the gifts. Let me just take a quick sip here. Time am I up? Okay. So we want to look at the gifts that Leo Venus Starpoint brings us, right? This is at 20 degrees, 28 minutes. The concepts are around relationships, how we're relating to ourselves, how we're relating to others, how we're connecting with others. It has to do with our values. What is our mission, our values, our sense of purpose? Our purpose, our Leonic purpose is based on our values, right? We're living that out. It's also going to bring up themes about money, right? Venus does like to focus on monetizing things, and it's okay. We can talk about money in this world. It also has to do around beautifying things, right? Leo likes to have beautiful things around them, definitely creativity, pleasures in life. What is bringing you fun, right? Is romance bringing you fun? What's bringing you flair into your life, right? Is there a concept around children? Do you want more children, or do you want more fur babies? Are fur babies a part of your world right now, right? How are you radiating your essence? How are you radiating your mission, what you're passionate about? Romance can definitely be heightened under this transit. Again, right? I had met my ex-fiance during the beginning of that period, right? There was romance, there was attraction, there was passion, right? There's playmates, right? Those things can happen under this type of transit we're getting, which is super exciting. If you're in a relationship, those things might get reinvigorated again, right? You might get a boost of that again, a full expression of it, right? Or you might be evaluating the energy exchange of that, right? We want to consider the mode and the element of Leo. Okay, it's fixed fire. It's the campfire. It's what keeps us warm throughout the night. It's a life force type of energy. Okay, it can be stubborn at times, but that's okay. Sometimes we need to be persistent and stubborn about the things that we're passionate about so we can have it to our full expression, so we can lead fully into what we're supposed to be. Leo is also a leadership star quality type of energy. Are you ready for your star moment? Are you ready to come out into the world? Are you ready to birth your gifts? Are you ready to full expression yourself? Are you ready to take charge? Are you ready to lead humanity? We need new leaders, okay? We need passionate, creative, warm, heart-centered, spiritual people leading the packs, right? We need it now. This is a time. This is a time to invoke it, okay? So hopefully the potentials, which I put here, is to provoke courageous leaders in our fields, right? To find yourself falling in love with things, places, people, experiences, activities. Get a lust for life again. We so need that after 2020, just drained everybody from their essence. Okay, we're the dark crystal moment. We're taking the crystal back and we're getting the essence back to the people again, right? So there'll be a promotion in creative self-expression, creative in art and music and humanity. All of these things can come together. Leo fifth house also has to do with sports and having passion and an attraction to activities, stuff that just is fun. So maybe there's new athletes that become born under this, or have their full potential. There's so many ways that this energy can just explode for us and really just transition and change the way humanity is showing up and expressing ourselves. And there's space for everybody. That's the other thing too, is Leo energy is not the type of spotlight where it's selfish with its spotlight. Okay, it's because it's a leader. It inspires. It just shows up to inspire, and it just does. And just by doing that, it radiates its warmth so much that it gives to the people, which is its opposite sign, which is the Aquarius. It's exactly what we want to see right now. As we're shifting into Pluto and Aquarius, we want people to feel so enriched and full in their heart's desire that they're exploding with love and creativity, that there's literally motherfucking rainbows, excuse my language, rainbows all over the earth, right? This is what we're aiming for. And this is the potentials that we can see in our own lives, in our personal relationships, within ourselves, within our creative expression, with our work, and then with everybody else going forward. Okay. So feel free to just snapshot that if you need a reminder, but we're going to get into what you've probably been waiting for, the chart work. So I'm going to bring up the chart, and I appreciate everybody who has stuck with me until now. I hope you're enjoying this. If you are, just make sure you give me a like and a subscribe if you're not subscribed yet to my channel. But I'm going to bring up our chart for this. Okay. Okay, here we go. So just let everybody sit with that for a minute. I get my notes. So for this chart, what was really loud to me was the fact that Lilith is conjunct this Venus star point, and that Eros, the asteroid Eros, and Vulcan, which is Aphrodite's husband, less attractive husband, is opposite this Venus star point. Okay, so we look to the 28-degree conjunction, right? And Venus is retrograde now, right? So she becomes a morning star under this transit. And so Venus becomes more aggressive and more warrior-like with her passions and her pursuits and all of the things that we just talked about, what this Venus and Leo can bring, right? All these gifts, they become heightened with passion. And there's a sense of more activism here with the Lilith conjunct this, okay? Because one of the things that I seek about with Lilith in the chart is that it's becoming aware of issues where there is an imbalance and the need to speak out against things that are unjust, right? When we look to the Lilith storyline overall, and I won't give a full education on this, but definitely read Tom Jacobs' book on Lilith. It's really important. It gives you a great perspective on Lilith themes, and we all have Lilith in our chart, okay? And so here in Leo, this is a Lilith that's, I'm already acting like it, and I think Lilith is already in Leo right now, but you know, it's bold, it's creative, it's very outgoing, it's very expressive in its form. You know, it needs to be opinionated, and it needs some recognition for what Lilith is fighting out against, okay? Because Lilith feels, it either feels the suppression of like the fact that Lilith cannot express itself or can't like stand up for himself or herself, him or herself, whatever, you know, it doesn't matter, but they're non-gender specific. But there's a need to fight for something with this star point that really like inspires you, that really is like urging you, that you feel like in your raw visceral experience that you need to fight for this, okay? And so again, for me, this is showing up in my career house. This is about my career. This is about my work, my astrology work, the missions that I am on, the perspectives that I want to bring out that I know is a different perspective than most people. You know, this is like the underdog, fighting for the underdog. And then also, yeah, just like encouraging that activism, that social awareness of inequality where it shows up at times. And it's opposing the Aquarius nature, okay? And so if anything, we're moving into Pluto and Aquarius where, you know, there is going to be this unconscious eruption within humanity that's going to transform humanity overall in so many different ways. And it is about what is better for the people overall. You know, Aquarius is very much about equality for humanity. What is best for everybody? How is everybody benefiting? Because nobody's special. Nobody should be on a platform. You know, we need to have everybody inclusive, right? And so this Venus star point very much might activate those dynamics within individuals where you feel very passionate about these things. And so the other part is that it's opposite Eros, right? And it's opposite Vulcan. So okay, Vulcan was Venus, right? It's opposite Venus, was Venus's, you know, hideous husband, and there was a suppression within that marriage, right? There was an indesirable union, right? That Aphrodite had to be, you know, she was under, she could not escape this marriage, right? And so the fact of this opposition with something that is kind of suppressive in a way, or something that we don't really like, we're not really loving, that's in our life. Again, we have to go back to that Aphrodite Vulcan story of like, well, it's about polarity, right? And it's about the integration of everything in our life, and that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So something might shift and change because Venus is going to go retrograde this summer, where you see something in a different light, in a different perspective than you do right now. And I encourage people to be open to that awareness, to invite in that Aquarius theme, to be open into the beauty of something that you're not seeing yet. Okay, you're not aware of it yet. It will get activated. It will come through you, but it's not activated yet. And so you just want to be open to this, because what will probably happen, I don't want to say for sure, but what I'm seeing from my predictive quality and then also my evolutionary perspective of this is that we're also going to get struck by Eros, because Eros is opposite this conjunction too. And so with Eros's story, you know, Eros represents love and desire, right? And as an asteroid, it's love and desire. Right? When we get struck and we get hit by an arrow accidentally by love and desire, okay? Eros, short story, short mythology story. Eros was the son of Aphrodite. Aphrodite was super jealous because she's vain in her ways. She was super jealous of this earthly goddess Psyche. So Aphrodite to her son is like, you need to hit Psyche with your arrow and make her fall in love with this hideous person, right? Trying to replicate her own story. What ends up happening is Eros hits himself accidentally and falls in love with Psyche. And so what this represents in mythology in our own lives is like, we don't mean to fall in love with people sometimes, and it just happens. So under this Venus star point, I feel like there's going to be a person, place, thing, object, something where we didn't see the beauty in it at first. And this could very much be a traumatic situation you've been going through for the last few years, where you didn't see the beauty in it. And then all of a sudden you get hit by Eros's arrow and you're like, oh my God, I'm in love with this, right? I'm in love with this situation. I'm in love with everything that I had to go through up until now, because now I'm in love. Now I'm inspired. Now I have this creativity, and now I need to integrate that into my life, right? Because oppositions are about integration. So that's why I'm saying under this transit to be open, to be excited about what is the possibilities and the potentials to come, okay? Because, you know, sometimes falling in love with something is not a choice. We don't have a choice. Like, I did not expect to fall in love with astrology while learning to fly airplanes. It wasn't, I never even knew what astrology was. Like, I had no idea. All I knew was I was an Aries. That was it. So sometimes just like, and then I fell in love. I never knew I could fall in love with a career so deeply and so passionately. And this is what happened to me in my 10th house, right? And so you want to look at, where is this new lust and love and compassion and excitement like going to be stimulated, right, in your life under this awesome, exciting transit that's coming up for us, you know? And I understand that like we're going to have a retrograde, and retrogrades cannot be great for everything. And I understand that there will be challenging times throughout these transits. I'm not like an overly idealistic person here, but we've got to give into the beauty when astrology shows up and gives it to us, right? And of course there's polarity. Of course there's going to be tension, okay? This is square Jupiter in Taurus, and it's square Uranus in Taurus. But to me, this just overextends to the fact that Jupiter and Uranus is an unexpected adventure that awaits you, okay? And it's unexpected resource, an unexpected asset that can show up, that if you're willing to move with the tension, and if you're willing to dive in and step into that opportunity, it will be gifted to you to carry forward, okay? it will give you an opportunity to fall in love with something and bring passion into your life, you know, in a way. And the other part of Eris's story, which is important to bring about, and we'll get into other transits, other stuff too in the chart. But the other part is that, you know, after Eros hits himself, right, and falls in love with Psyche, which Psyche is over here, right, and it's this big giant fixed grand cross, right? If we're using the asteroids, which I am, right, we've got Lilith, Sun, Venus up here, you know, square Psyche down here, right? Opposite the Eros and Vulcan down here, and then square the Uranus, Jupiter over here, right? Big grand cross in the sky, but that's encouraging us to shift and change and grow to something though that's going to sustain and it's going to change for the long haul, right? And the other part of Eris's story is that, you know, he brings Psyche to a castle at night and starts to appear at night. And along the storyline, and you know, Psyche's looking at him in the candlelight, and for some reason, I forget the details, but Psyche's sisters basically convince her to betray Eros, right? And so he's just like heartbroken, and she betrays Eros, and he flees. Like he flees because he's like, this woman cannot love me for my unconditional self that I am, right? Can she not fully love me for everything that I am? And that's something that we experience in life itself. Like we experience that in our relationships at times when we feel like we're unlovable if we show up in our full expression, okay? And that is that Leo stuff, showing up in your full expression. We can also feel that if we're trying to be bold and put our work out in the world, right? What if the people don't like me? What if nobody likes my work, right? If you're an artist, for instance, like what if nobody likes what I've created? What if I fully show myself, my heart, I poured myself into this lecture, for instance, and I get like 2 likes, right? Like, so what? Who cares? The point is that there's challenges. There's challenges that come when it comes to our relationships with the stuff that we want to create, with our families, with our values to ourselves, with our relationships with other people. We're constantly being met by these challenges. But what I'm seeing with that square to that Uranus Jupiter is it's growing our value. It's growing our sense of self-worth unexpectedly, right? It's creating expansion. It's making room. Uranus is like shaking things up and pushing things out of the way, and Jupiter's like bringing things in and pushing us to grow even more into ourselves, right? And so a part of that story is then Eros is like distraught, right? And he leaves, and Psyche is like, oh my God, I effed up really bad. I effed up. This person loved me and I love this person. So Psyche goes to his mom, Aphrodite, and she's like, how can I get him back? I need to get him back. Help me. And so Aphrodite says, all right, you got to do these 4 challenges and you might die. By the way, you might die doing these because they're extremely freaking hard. But if you do them, then Eros will come back to you. And Psyche gets through them. She gets through it for the love. And that's what I'm saying under this lunation, is that there will be challenges. There will be something that you're struck with, that you fall in love with, and it's going to be illuminated to you, and the Venus retrograde is going to fucking wreak havoc, and you're going to have some trials and tribulations, but you're going to extract something of self-value, a resource within yourself that you didn't know existed, and you're going to do it for your own passion and your own sense of love and what you're fighting, that Lilith, what are you fighting for yourself, right? What is that underlying passion that you're fighting for in your heart of hearts, right? And how are you going to lead and go forward with that? Because you're also being a leader in your own life and for other people as well, to see you experience and go through. And it's, you know, we've got this this transit is also Venus and the Sun is also going to be forming a trine to that North Node in Aries, which is going to, now that had shifted, right? I believe it's in July when the nodes shift. And I will have a separate lecture on that as well, because that is super important to me. But again, it's about fighting. It's about pioneering, right? It's about being passionate in the pursuit of something new, of expressing ourselves, of being bold, right? These airy qualities of having this fighting spirit, if you will, for the direction that we're going in our life. And there's a trine, that creativity of that sun and that Venus and that love and that heart is pushing that warrior essence, right? And there is no warrior story that I know of that didn't have heart, that didn't succeed unless they had heart behind it. And so that's really important to understand too, is that the heart is behind the warrior here as we're shifting into this new Venus star point. Okay. Will it be emotionally sensitive? Hell yeah. Cancer moon in this. Hell yeah. Sensitive. Okay. I've got a Cancer moon. I'm just not going to lie. It will be emotional. But again, the feeling and the emotions are going to come together to support that right side of the brain of Venus. Okay. Remember, we lack air in this chart. It's all about the feeling nature. It's all about what we're feeling compelled to pour ourselves into. And there's no greater force besides water. You know, water has that capacity to nurture, to grow, right? To grow something. We've got so much water in earth. We can grow something under this chart. You know, it can drown us, or it can give us, again, like nutrients and life force and fluidity and the compassion and the empathy that we need for ourselves behind this energy. Okay. And the other thing I wanted to point out too is at this time, Pluto will have been retrograde into Capricorn. Okay. And the moon will be opposite that day. The moon will be opposite that Pluto in Capricorn. So in a way too, it's about, you know, Pluto in Capricorn is about taking emotional responsibility for ourselves and being able to emotionally regulate ourselves. And we're finishing up Pluto in Capricorn. And it can kind of feel like a little exhausting under this energy when it comes to the Capricorn themes. Like I've already done it, but there's something that still needs to be, there's something under this Pluto and Capricorn that still needs to be cleaned up or empowered within yourself, right? The last few things that you need to pick up, if you will, that bring you confidence and empowerment when it comes to taking responsibility for your life, when it comes to showing up and owning up for your personal ambition. Okay. And that's really a powerful thing about Pluto and Capricorn, is really being ambitious to achieve what it is that your soul has come here to do in this life, right? And to sustain that, right? Saturnian things, sustain that for the long haul. And I think that it actually is like a very supportive backdrop and undertone, because Pluto will be squaring the nodes as well. Okay. And now the nodes are going to be in a different sign. It's going to be in Libra and Aries. So it's about energy exchange, and it's about understanding like the importance of the energy exchange that you're giving into things, right? Energy exchange, South Node in Libra, and then exerting your energy and your will, North Node in Aries, and then Pluto in Capricorn. How much time do certain things cost me, and how much energy can I put into this that will have me sustain it for the long haul? Capricorn, the long haul. Okay. So it's a time, if you are confused about what is going on with this Venus star point for you, like, what am I pouring myself into? Maybe you don't know yet, right? Open yourself up, like start asking yourself the questions that we talked about in the beginning of the lecture. You know, what is the evolutionary intention of my soul? Specifically with this chart, what is the evolutionary intention of my Venus? What did I come here to do, to learn, to experience, to inspire, to create with, to love? What did I come here to do? Because not the whole, all of life does not need to be so hard. You know, like we can have fun. The universe should be fun. And we're all a part of like creating that for ourselves, right? And we're all here to support ourselves for this. So I am gonna leave everyone with this video at this point because I know that I put in so much information into this, and so I hope that it was helpful. And if you have any questions, if you have anything you want to give feedback on, just feel free to write me a comment down below. Feel free to like email me, Makayla at scenicroutastrology.com. That will be down below. If you want a reading specifically for this or where you're at in your chart, evolutionary, the Venus star point, I do have readings. You can check me out on scenicroutastrology.com. All my offerings are on there in my bio. And yeah, just I want to know like how everyone is feeling with this, if you feel inspired, if you're excited, if you're nervous. But don't worry if you're not really sure yet on what's showing up for you, because I do think that we're all going to get struck with a little bit of love or creativity around this transit. And I think it's super exciting, and it's something to really wholeheartedly step into. So again, I appreciate everybody for being here. I gotta walk my chows because they are getting restless. And I will be back again soon. Thank you so much for sticking around, and I appreciate you. So I'll talk to you later. Bye.